don't go the holier than thous.
That's right.
Rescue reports that he is on his way to the Milwaukee Bucks.
He's not getting his happy ending this time.
Okay, today is December 2nd, Saturday, December 2nd. Great show today, guys. Hub Arkush from NFL Weekly, Pro Football Weekly. He's going to come on, talk all things NFL with us. About a third of the season left to go, getting into the playoffs, down the stretch here. Awesome interview with him. He was on about 4 months ago before the season started in the NFL, and we have an awesome talk so far, breaking down the season so far with him. And then, like I said, going into the playoffs here in this last stretch of the season. We'll break down our, NFL, week 13 ahead, guys, coming up like we always do. Closest game, most intriguing storyline, surprise, all of that like we always do. I do want to touch base on some quick NBA talks first, guys. Mark Cuban, we'll start here. Mark Cuban is selling the majority stakes in the Mavericks. This report came out on Thursday. Mark Cuban will no longer be the majority owner of the Mavericks. A little weird. He will still own minority stakes and will actually be taking over a lot of the basketball operations in the meantime until the Addison Group gets their feet wet, basically, and gets more accustomed to running an NBA team. So kind of weird overall. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. I mean, Mark Cuban is probably the most recognized sports owner in America. So I thought this was a pretty important take, a pretty important thing to talk about, especially given the Mavericks and how well he's been able to turn the team around. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
That's interesting
this
timing why he's selling the team to the Adelson family, and I'm pretty shocked that he is selling the team, obviously, and I don't know what he does in the future.
Well, he seems to be scaling back on a lot of things because he's not going to be on the next season of Shark Tank either. So maybe he's just choosing, I've had my time in the spotlight. It's time to retire kind of and move on. But if he's going to have more control over the franchise, that's obviously not going to happen. Mark Cuban, I just don't expect him to go away, but I'm a little surprised at the timing.
Yeah, he's going to, like I said, he's still going to, for a majority of the time, he's still going to be running a lot of the basketball operations of the Mavericks because, as you said, Justin, Adelson family coming in, they're buying the team, they're buying the majority stakes. They're not really familiar with running an NBA team, though, from what I hear, the vibe I get. And so until they do get their feet wet and, they learn about running an NBA team and, familiarizing themselves with the governors of the NBA, Mark Cuban will still be the man in charge, so to say. I know a big part of the story, a big part of the reason why he wants to do this is because I do know he wants to make a new stadium for the Mavericks. He wants to make a new stadium in kind of like an casino, like inside a casino complex, and bring sports betting to Texas, excuse me. So this is his way of trying to get sports betting in Texas, get a better, bigger stadium for the Mavericks as well. And he just thinks the Adelson family, with the money they can bring in, can really, really help broker that deal. NBA season tournament, guys. Group play is finally over. Celtics, Bucks, Knicks, Pacers, Lakers, Suns, Pelicans, and Kings all move on. I want to touch base on this real fast, and particularly, guys, because ratings actually were a lot better than we thought they would be for the NBA in-season tournament, at least the group play so far. Group play happening, all of November pretty much and into December here. It happened on Tuesday and Friday nights, and viewership on Tuesday and Friday nights compared to last year in the NBA is actually up about 19-20%. So really surprising. And I want to, I don't know if people were just checking the courts out, tuning in to look at the courts. What are your guys' thoughts on this? I mean, it kind of blew us away because we really thought this was going to be a big failure for the NBA, and it actually ended up bringing in a lot of new faces and a lot of new fans and viewership early in the NBA season when a lot of people don't tend to.
Yeah, well, I think there's the curiosity factor. I think that's the biggest aspect of this. But I mean, think about the smaller teams, not the ones that are expected to compete for an NBA title, but this is a big deal for, the Indiana Pacers. It could be a big deal for the New York Knicks. It could be a big deal for teams that, this could be a goal that they kind of reach early in the season, knowing they're probably not going to win a championship, but they've got something to play for. And especially for the younger guys who might be living not paycheck to paycheck, but not exactly breaking the bank either, the opportunity to have $100,000 or whatever, a big thing for them. Yeah. And so, I mean, I would qualify it as a success because if nothing else, people are talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll try my best to break down the knockout rounds coming up here. In the East, Celtics will visit the Pacers on Monday. Bucks will host the Knicks on Tuesday. Pelicans will head to the Kings on Monday, and the next day on that Tuesday again. Multiple games going on early next week. Suns will travel to the Lakers in the quarterfinal round. The winners will play the teams in their respective conferences on Thursday, December 7th in Las Vegas, with the finals taking place 2 days later on the 9th, again in Las Vegas. So pretty cool. I'm happy for the NBA. Adam Silver continues to show us that he can lead the NBA to the righteous land and keep making improvements in the league. One of the best commissioners ever in sports, I would say. Last thing of NBA news, I do want to break down this funny little legal dispute going on between the Knicks and the Raptors. First time an NBA team is suing another NBA team. So a little bit historic here. Just to break it down, the Knicks are suing the Raptors. They're claiming that a video assistant, an old video assistant that used to work for the Knicks, I'm going to botch his name, Ikuchukwu Azutam, he basically stole a bunch of photos and gave them to the Raptors. Like, he basically took a bunch of scouting videos, confidential files, scouting reports, frequency files, prep books, and he basically gave them to the Raptors. This includes over 3,000 different files. And again, the Knicks, of course, being in that same division as the Raptors, that Atlantic division, obviously not very happy about this, and they are suing the Raptors. So I wanted to bring it up because I think a lot of people know there's a lawsuit going on, but not many people really know what the lawsuit was about, including myself, until I looked it up. So any other like things you guys want to really talk about this? I mean, it's pretty interesting. Like I said, first time NBA history. Well, first time an NBA team has ever sued another NBA team, and yeah, it's a little interesting, especially considering just how the NBA is. Any thoughts on this, guys? You want to bring up before we move on to football talk?
Yeah, I mean, it's a legal thing, so I don't really know a ton about it. But yeah, anytime another team's suing another, not all that great.
Not pretty.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Definitely.
Ikuchukwu Azutam.
Definitely not pretty. Also,
but
yeah. See.
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's move on to football, though, guys. Finally, move on to football. Let's break down Thursday Night Football recap real fast. Seahawks, Cowboys. Surprisingly, awesome game. Thursday Night Football never has an awesome game, and we did. Dallas, I think a lot of let me ask you guys this first until we get more into the specifics. But what do you guys think about this win for Dallas? Is it? I hear a lot of things coming out today. A lot of people were kind of speculating, arguing about this. Is this a good win or a bad win for Dallas?
There's no bad wins in the NFL. There's only good wins, and this was a good win because Seattle's a good team. The record may not necessarily reflect that, especially what's coming up the next couple weeks. That's a good team. Dallas's defense didn't play their best game, yet they managed to get stops in the fourth quarter. They kind of played under some adversity at home for the first time all year. Every other home game, they've won by 20 or more points, and Dak Prescott right now might be the front runner for MVP. He has been spectacular. CeeDee Lamb might be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. They scored 41 points, and it felt like an off game for them. So, no, there's no such thing as a bad win in the NFL. And I think one of the big reasons that this game was as good as it was is because typically Thursday night games are between teams playing 4 days later. Both these teams had a full week in between because they both played on Thanksgiving. So I think that was a big reason why the quality of play was so good.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, I forgot about that. They both did play on Thanksgiving, so they had a full week off. Yeah, Prescott, though, Zach, like you said, 29 for 41, just under 300 yards at 299 and 3 scores. 3 big-time throws, too, and no really turnover-worthy plays either. I think he definitely did put himself in the MVP conversation after Thursday night's game. And, I mean, that stat line doesn't even give him justice because 4 of those incompletions were pretty bad drops by his receivers, all things considered. And Cowboys keeping up their home win streak alive. Best home win streak for the Cowboys is their 18-game home win streak they had in the 1979 to 1981 season. They now have their 14th consecutive home game. Eagles, Justin, coming in next week to Dallas. Dallas, I think, I saw 4 consecutive games at home. They've scored over 40 points. are we concerned about the Eagles coming into town next week? Because I definitely think it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I
for the
think it's going to
Eagles.
be a very big game for the Eagles and both the Cowboys as
Yeah.
well. The Eagles playing pretty, playing teams that are coming in well rested too for the last few games there, and playing against the Chiefs
Mm-hmm.
on a short, well, after the bye week, playing against the Chiefs, then playing against the Bills, short work week. Now the 49ers come in well rested on Sunday, and then going to Dallas next Sunday night. They're
Yeah.
coming off a Thursday night game for them. So for the Eagles,
Yeah.
they got to win one of these two games. They got to beat San Francisco or Dallas, or win both, which best case scenario, but win
Yep.
one or two, and they're in pretty good position for the number 1 seed and the division title.
Yeah, I just keep getting frustrated by how inconsistent the Seahawks are. I mean, they played amazing last night. Geno Smith played amazing, or Thursday night. Geno Smith played well, 334 pass yards and 3 touchdowns, all to DK Metcalf. DK finished with 134 himself. Yeah, Cowboys though, starting on this gauntlet they have coming up. This is really where I mean, we talked about it on Thursday's show, and I think even maybe on Tuesday's show as well. This is really where the Cowboys have to really prove themselves, because they have a gauntlet coming up in their schedule, and they've really only been beating down on bad teams so far. So we'll see how they can do these next 4 games coming up. Week 13, let's preview it, coming up on Sunday, tomorrow. Closest game of the week, as we always start, Zach, and we'll begin with you. What's your closest game of the
Well,
week?
I'm going to save the more intriguing game for later, but I think the closest game is going to be the Broncos and the Texans. I think these are two teams that could be fighting for one of the last spots in the AFC playoffs. And you talk about teams that are doing it different ways. The Broncos have been largely doing it with their defense, which is crazy to think about after they gave up a 70 spot against the Dolphins earlier in the year. But their defense over the last 5 games has been great. They've shut down Patrick Mahomes, shut down Josh Allen. This has been one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they're going up against C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell, and an offense that throws the ball about 40 times per game. Even the run game's gotten a little bit better the last couple of weeks. So this is an intriguing game. I think it's an ultimate clash of styles, and I think it's going to be a 4-quarter game that goes down to the wire, because it seems like pretty much every Bronco and every Texan game has done that this season.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Eagles 49ers. I mean, no surprise here. That might be your most intriguing game, Zach, but Eagles and 49ers. Eagles are 3-0 in their own gauntlet. We talked about the Cowboys. I mean, they beat the Cowboys, they beat the Chiefs, and they beat the Bills, and now this is the 4th team in this gauntlet that the Eagles have coming up. Last meeting, of course, conference championship game last year. 49ers had pretty much everyone injured at that time. We all know that. Purdy is leading the NFL right now in passer rating, yards per attempt, and completion percentage. Hurts obviously also playing like an MVP, though. He's on a streak of 14 consecutive victories against teams with winning records. Hurts is, and 49ers, of course, are one of those teams. So I do think Niners are the favorites. Well, they are the favorites in Vegas, and I think they actually will end up winning this game too. Niners winners of the last 3 straight games by an average of 19.3 points. That's insane. I mean, they've been literally beating teams by almost an average of 20 points the last 3 games. Deebo Samuel's out for blood. He's been calling out Bradbury. Hassan Reddick been calling out the team as well. This is going to be the best game of the week, I think, along with the Broncos and Texans, Zach, like you said. But it's the battle of the best teams in the NFC, and likely the winner of the 1 seed too, especially as we head on to the end of the season. Justin, what is your closest game?
I'm going to go Broncos Texans. I think this is going to be a very close game, as Zach said, and I think this is going to be a wild card battle. This is going to be these two teams could potentially be AFC wild card teams with the way things are going in the AFC. The Texans having a much better year, and the Broncos also having a much better year after starting off 1-5 or 1-4 was, I think. And it's going to be a big game, actually. It's going to be a big game in Houston. Never thought we would say that at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Let's go on. Surprise of the week, Zach. Or most intriguing storyline. I'm sorry. Most intriguing storyline. What is your most intriguing storyline?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. It's the 49ers and the Eagles. Because if Philadelphia wins this game, you can pretty much lock them up for the number 1 seed in the NFC, because they'll be 3 clear of the Niners plus tiebreaker. And they could even afford to drop 1 to Dallas and still be in good position to win the NFC East and get the number 1 seed. For the 49ers, if they want a chance to host the NFC playoffs, they need to win this game. There's no doubt about it. not to mention all the bad blood that exists between these teams. The 49ers making all those comments after they got blown out in Philadelphia last year without a quarterback. Deebo Samuel calling out James Bradbury, Trent Williams being available now, Christian McCaffrey being available. Now that the 49ers are playing with a quarterback, this game should be a lot more competitive. Remember, it was 10-7 at one point in the second quarter before Brock Purdy just got hurt, and there was no chance that the 49ers were ever going to be able to throw a forward pass in that game. So I expect a lot of intrigue. I expect it to be a much closer game, and this is one that the 49ers have been waiting for 10 months to play. And for the Eagles, do you wonder a little bit with all the big games they played, not that they're going to have a letdown, but maybe the 49ers might be a little bit fresher at the end of this game than the Eagles will be, especially with an extra 3 days because they played on Thanksgiving. So this might be the best remaining regular season game of the year. It's either that or the Eagles-Cowboys next week.
Yep. Yep. I'm going to continue on. I mean, we've been touching on the same two games, but I'm going to continue on Broncos and Texans for my most intriguing game. I mean, really, is any team after this weekend going to continue on that winning streak? I mean, the Broncos and the Eagles now are tied for a 5-game win streak, and I want to see if the Broncos can make it 6. Offense has been looking really, really good for the Broncos, or decent, I should say, at least for the Broncos compared to how they started the season. It's their defense, though, that has been kind of stepping up. I mean, I know Russell Wilson has been playing a lot better too. He's back to being I'm not going to say he's back, but he's definitely back to being like he was at least a little bit in Seattle. Broncos find ways to win games. So they've been doing it, like I said, the last 5 games. Offensive line absolutely manhandled the Browns defense last week. The Broncos need to follow that recipe this week coming up in order to have a chance to win against the Texans. So, this is playoff potential and playoff implications, as we already kind of talked about, Zach. And whoever wins this game very well might get that last spot in the AFC. So it's going to be a huge, huge matchup. Russell Wilson needs to play well for the Broncos to have any success. This year, alone, he's having 20 touchdowns with only 4 interceptions and has 2,200 yards of total offense. He's been scoring consistently too, and taking care of the ball in the process. Like I said, only 4 interceptions to his 20 touchdowns. So defense has to step up. They've been, being a little inconsistent lately, but have been playing good, all things considered, especially compared to the start of the year. And Russell Wilson has to show up, play well, play consistently, like he's been doing for them to have a chance to come away with this game. Justin, what's your most?
The Lions going to be able to bounce back from Thanksgiving Day. They're going to New Orleans on the road, and Jared Goff hasn't been too impressive in the last 2 games. He's turned the ball over a lot, losing to the Packers, almost losing to the Bears at home. Does this continue for the Lions as they go to New Orleans to play the Saints, who are 5-6, just coming off a loss against the Falcons at home? Now they're going to be at home against the Lions, who are 1-1, obviously, in the last 2, but Jared Goff hasn't been playing like he has at the beginning of the year or through the midway point of the year.
It's a turnovers, like we said before. He took care of the ball so well, and then all of a sudden he's just having all these turnovers. It's crazy. Surprise of the week, Zach. What's your surprise?
Yeah, Justin brought the game up. I'm going with the Saints to knock off the Lions. I don't know if I trust the Lions right now, especially with the way that they're turning the ball over. And this feels like a desperate game for the Saints if they're going to stay in the NFC South race. Right now, the Falcons hold the tiebreaker over them. I think Derek Carr in the red zone has to be better. I think they're going to be this week. And, we always know how tough it is to play in the Superdome. The Lions are not the same team on the road that they are at home. So I'm going to go with the Saints at home to knock off the Lions as 4.5-point underdogs.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Flacco, maybe winning against the Rams. Obviously, Browns, I think, are better than the Rams, but not particularly with Joe Flacco at quarterback. 38 years old now. DTR most likely won't play for the Browns, so it will be Joe Flacco, the 38-year-old, to start. Offensive line has to step up for the Browns. Joe Flacco, as you can imagine, is not mobile right now, so the offensive line is going to have to give him all the time in the world. But if they can do that, and he's comfortable in the pocket, can get some nice throws in, Browns definitely have a chance to win over the Rams, who Rams have been playing pretty well, all things considered, so far. The defense has been a problem for the Rams, but the offense has been really, really hot as of late. And Browns defense is just a different breed, of course. And I think the Browns defense will be able to halt the Rams offense success that they've been having lately. So yeah, this is going to be my surprise of the week. Give me the Browns over the Rams, despite how the Rams have been playing lately. Yeah, I think Joe Flacco will get it done. We don't really know how he's gonna play. It's been a long time since he suited up, but I'm excited to see him play. Like I said, DTR most likely will not be playing for the Browns with that injury. So yeah, Flacco over the Rams over Stafford. Give me that. Justin, what's your
I actually
surprise
got
of the
two
week?
games that could be potential upsets. Number one, I have the Eagles. I think the Eagles at home, but basically weather conditions are going to be playing a factor here with the 49ers. A lot of people are talking about the Niners have rests. They do. They're coming in more rested than the Eagles. But the Eagles at home have more of an advantage. And the Niners, I mean, they're not used to playing in those weather conditions. It's going to be rainy in Philadelphia on Sunday, just like it was with the Bills and the Eagles. But I think this is going to be a factor for the 49ers. And another game that could be a potential upset, Packers over the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I think the Chiefs have been, obviously they're 1-1 in the last two, but going into Lambeau, there's definitely going to be weather conditions there too. The Packers, I'm starting to think that the Packers might be able to get a wild card in the NFC with the way they're playing, with the way they played at Detroit. They beat the Chargers at home. Can they upset the Chiefs? They very well could. So two potential upsets are the Eagles over the 49ers and the Packers over the Chiefs for me this weekend.
Yeah, Jordan Love's been playing pretty good the last couple of games, so we'll see what he can do. Shootout of the week. Let's go to shootout of the week. Zach, what do you have being a high scoring
Broncos
game
Texans. I think Russell Wilson and CJ Stroud are about to have at it. I think the Broncos defense, as good as it is, I think they're going to bend a little bit this week. I think Stroud, he seems to be good for at least 3 touchdown passes every week now. So I'm going to take the Broncos and Texans as the shootout.
I'm going to go Dolphins Commanders. I kind of joked before, I'm always going to take the Dolphins as my shootout of the week. I mean, they alone have been covering overs this year. But Sam Howell, I mean, he's been playing inconsistent, but the games he does play well, he balls out. I mean, he posted at least 300 passing yards in 4 of his last 5 games. That included, of course, the 325 against the Patriots. He has just under 3,350 passing yards on the season, and pretty good TD to interception ratio too. Terry McLaurin has been playing awesome for the Commanders. Has brought in just under 700 receiving yards for the season. Like I said, offense is inconsistent, but they show up when it's needed, and I think it's going to be needed against the Dolphins. And like I said, Dolphins don't even need an introduction to why they're good on offense. Passing game, running game, doesn't really matter. Tua playing amazing. So yeah, if Sam Howell and the Washington offense that we see from time to time shows up and plays when they need to, which I think they will against Miami, it's going to be a high-scoring game, and it's going to be a really fun game to watch too. Justin,
I'm going to go back to Green Bay with the Packers and the Chiefs. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. Jordan Love, as we just said, playing very well in the previous 2 games. I think this is going to be a very, very high-scoring game with the Chiefs and the Packers. I don't think it'll be low-scoring. I think it's going to be 34. Look at a 34-31 game or a 37-34 game.
Okay. We'll see if you're right when it comes to that. Snoozer of the week, opposite end. Zach, what's your snoozer?
Chargers, Patriots. One coach is already getting fired. The other coach might be past his prime. New England has basically mailed it in by now. And the Chargers, not on the road, they're typically not very good, especially when you're playing a 10 a.m. game that has sleep written all over it for them. This game is going to be a snoozer.
Yeah, Staley's fired if they lose this game.
He's gone already.
I know it's. Yeah, well, do you think they'll wait till end of the season? At this point, why not? Because I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs at this point. My snoozer of the week. Snoozer, right? Yeah. Panthers Bucks. I'm going to go with Panthers Bucks. Obvious reasons. Bucks have been playing very bad. Panthers are 1-10. Absolutely underperforming. Young has only completed 61.7% of his passes. He's been playing absolutely terrible this whole year. Obviously, I think he will bounce back. He will end up being a good quarterback, but been having a really, really bad first year so far. Panthers, just offense alone, just without even Bryce Young, is terrible. They rank 30th in total yards per game, 29th in points per game. As a team, they're 28th in rushing with only an average of 92.6 yards per contest, and 20th with 173 passing yards per game. Just absolutely terrible, terrible offense. And Bucks, like I said, are equally as bad. Had a good start to the season, but they're really feeling the effects of Brady leaving, and Baker Mayfield just is not getting it done. I mean, the Bucks themselves, ranked 22nd in yards per game, 24th in points per game, and 31st, almost dead last in rushing yards per game. So, yeah, this is going to be an ugly contest. Both offenses are struggling, and this game will likely hit the under, which is currently at 36.5. Justin,
I'm going to go Jets Falcons. Really the Falcons, I guess. Ritter's their starting quarterback, but Tim Boyle obviously being in there for the Jets. That game's going to be an absolute snoozer. Weather conditions will play a factor. The Falcons being a dome team, the Jets being outside. Obviously, the Northeast is going to have some rain this weekend, but the Jets and Falcons, that game's going to be an absolute snoozer.
Favorites of the week. Zach, we'll start with you. Who is your favorite of the week?
My favorite of the week, I'm going to take the Dolphins on the road against the Commanders. Miami beats the bad teams. The Commanders are not particularly good. Can't protect the quarterback, and I'm going to take the Dolphins. It's going to be a shootout, but Miami is built to win those kind of games, so I'm taking the Fins.
I'm going to go back to my favorite, go back to what we already talked about a little bit. Chargers over the Patriots. It's a must win at this point of the season for the Chargers to have any chance to even have sniffed the playoffs at this point. Staley, like I said, might lose his job if they lose this game. So Patriots, worst team in the NFL. They have been the worst team in the NFL. No talent on the roster at all, really. Maybe besides Stevenson, but besides that, incompetent QB play. Mac Jones, and Bailey Zappi equally bad. Bailey Zappi actually had flashes last year, but kind of came back to earth over these last couple of games when he's been playing over Mac Jones. Zappi will get the start, but obviously, like I just said, won't matter. Chargers have been bad this season too, but they really, like I said, need to win this game. Patriots only average 13.4 points a game, which should, it's going to be hard to keep up with the Chargers, who average, close to 25 a game. So yeah, this is going to give me the Chargers over this game. Must win. And yeah, they're going to be dominant over New England this Sunday. Justin, what is your
favorite of the week? I'm going to go Jaguars over the Bengals. The Bengals, their season's over. Let's obviously face it. Joe Burrow going down for the year. It's over. Jacksonville, definitely at an 8-3 team leading the AFC South. I think Jacksonville's going to win this game easily at home against the Burrow-less Bengals.
I think we covered them all. I don't think we really touched on Pittsburgh, Arizona. Did we touch on Pittsburgh, Arizona? I don't really think so. I don't really know much.
There's not
really
much to say about that
that
game. The Steelers' offense stinks, but their defense probably won't allow Arizona to score more than a field goal.
Colts, Titans, we didn't. Yeah, did we touch on that? No, I don't think.
Not real. No, I think the Colts continue their momentum. So. Titans have not been playing all that well lately, especially offensively. And even without Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss has been one of the best running backs in football. So I think the Colts continue their run.
Aren't they they won the last 5 games at home though? Titans?
I think so,
right? So. At Nissan, so that might be. I don't know. Might be interesting. Who knows? But terrible away. Titans are terrible on the road, but good at home. So that could be a factor. Writer's block. Zach, we'll start with you. What is your writer's block of the week heading into our interview with Hub?
Yeah, anybody who thinks Florida State's not making the playoffs, if they win this game tonight against Louisville, it will be tonight at the time you hear this. Florida State wins that game. They're 13-0, conference champion, Power 5 conference champ. They're not getting left out. No matter how ugly it is, no matter how bad it looks, 13-0 is 13-0. They're going to get their opportunity. Whether they're one of the 4 best teams in the country or not, you can have an argument about whether it should be the 4 best teams or the 4 most deserving teams. But under the current system, no undefeated Power 5 champ has ever been left out, and it's not going to happen this time if Florida State goes out and gets it
done. What about Rodemaker, though, even if you think he's injured? Like I know,
I'm not saying – I don't know if they're going to win. I'm just saying if they do, they're going to get in the playoff.
No, I mean like if they win, but Rodemaker's even out. I mean, they have I think a freshman playing.
Well, they did
tonight.
let in an Ohio State team in 2014 that was down to their third string quarterback, and that turned out pretty well for them.
True. Okay. Good point. My writer's block, this could also be kind of a long haul, but we'll get the long haul after the interview with Hub. Just all the reports with Aaron Rodgers coming back. Why is my question. I mean, there's no real reason to come back. He might come back for the last maybe game or two of the year if he's even lucky. And at that point, there's going to be absolutely no reason to come back because the Jets will be so far out of the playoff contention. And so I'm just, all the reports I'm hearing about him coming back. He wants the spotlight on him like he always does. He always has in the past. He's not going to come back. There's no way he comes back. It would be dumb for him to come back just from a career perspective. He's just going to injure himself again. And, might as well just wait, take the offseason off, really get healthy and, come back next year full force. So, yeah, just all the reports about him, a lot coming out this week, particularly, especially with the Jets opening up that 21-day window for him to be taken off the injury list. And like I said, there's no reason. So just, I'm, tired of hearing about it. Justin, what is your writer's block?
My writer's block of the week is this DK Metcalf sign language celebration. Who cares? I mean, CBS Sports just put it up today, and who cares? That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Played well, though, Thursday night. So, hey, good for him. Let's go on to our interview, guys. Hub Arkush from Pro Football Weekly. Awesome interview with him. We break down, all the teams pretty much, surprises, upsetting teams that, we've had this year. Getting a lot with the not play calling, reffing this year. Just the bad calls and especially pass interference. But a lot more to come with that with him. And without further ado, let's head over and talk to Hub Arkush, and we'll see you on the other side for Off the Map and Long Hauls. Okay, we now head to Chicago area, talk to Hub Arkush. Hub, we had you on before, recurring guest. I think it was back beginning of the season, before the season even started, we had you on. Talk about some NFL preseason stuff, off-season moves team were making. Want to have you on again. Probably about like a third of the season to go still here, in the NFL season, this 2023 season. It's been a weird season so far, a lot to get into. I do want to start with this, though. Might be a good place to start. I know Tom Brady came on this past week, earlier this week, I think maybe over the weekend or something like that, or early this week, talking about the NFL being a mediocre product. And I know it's not just him. I've heard a lot of other people say this too. I've been hearing a lot of other people say, about the NFL maybe not being as enjoyable this year. Scoring is down. It's reaching an all-time low. I mean, we just had this Thursday night football game against Seahawks and Cowboys, which obviously was very, very high scoring and very enjoyable. But overall, what is your opinion on his comments? And like I said, all the comments we've been hearing from other people throughout the league about this year being more on the boring side, less exciting.
Well, I have to say I haven't heard Tom's comments, so want to be careful with that. But I don't agree that it's a struggling league or that there's anything wrong with it. I do agree that it's been a very strange season, though, and I've been trying to figure that out the last couple of weeks as to what the various reasons might be. There are always injuries, but it does seem like there have been more serious injuries to franchise quarterbacks and top players. And so that's going to affect some things. It's going to affect some of the teams that we expected to be really good, like the Ravens and not the Ravens, but certainly the Bengals and the Browns. The 49ers during that 3-game losing streak had some injuries. So, but injuries have always been part of the game. The biggest thing that I've noticed this year, to be honest with you, is that I think the officiating has been terrible. It's almost getting hard to watch games. There's a lot of possible reasons for that. But there's no question in my mind that the officiating has been poor, particularly with pass interference. I don't know if any official even knows what the rules are anymore with pass interference, the way those things are getting called. But and then with all the young quarterbacks playing because of the injuries, you see some teams performing differently then. So a very different year, but I wouldn't necessarily agree that the NFL lost any of its quality. I think that's still there, and it'll start to come back as we get closer to the playoffs. I hope so, because then we'll all enjoy the games more.
You don't think there's been more pass interference calls to try to get more scoring, do you? As a potential to get more scoring?
I can't give it a reason. I've talked to folks about it. I've talked to mostly NFL people who are also concerned about it. And I know one of the issues, and you have to be careful with this because you don't want anybody to think that, you're being unfair or unreasonable. But there has definitely been a move in recent years to try and hire more minority officials, more female officials. That doesn't mean that they're not just as good. I can't say that. I haven't studied the officials to say where the problems are coming from, but there is definitely a larger group of new officials who are a little different from the way they've hired people in the past. And I know that the league owners and folks are talking about it and trying to figure out if that is part of the problem or not. But I do know that there's a lot of conversation at the NFL offices about concerns about the quality of officiating, but I don't think anybody's put their hand yet on exactly what the problem is.
Yeah, I mean, it should be regardless. I mean, they might just be new hires. They might just not be as seasoned as the referees we're used to seeing in the past, and they might just be new, and that might be the problem. But regardless, it's supposed to be a very linear process. I mean, they have this rule book written down to the T, literally. I mean, about what is what's pass interference, what's not pass interference. It should be very, very detailed as far as what the refs should be calling, but yet it still seems like it's so objective or subjective, I should say, subjective when they make these calls.
Well, I think that's exactly the problem, or a big part of the problem. And we, as well, media, but also as fans, are going to have our own opinions, and we're not always going to be right. But I think it's pretty obvious from the number of challenges we're seeing, the time that's being invested in getting these calls right, and then when they challenge them and is from where I'm watching, still don't always get them right. That's where it becomes a real concern about the consistency. And the pass interference is the most obvious because it's the one that seems to be called the most differently depending on who's calling them. Holding is another one that you're seeing more around where people aren't sure if it should have been called or not. But I think it's just something that the NFL, I know, is already investigating and is going to have to make some changes to and put some things in place to improve it again. They will. They always do. The NFL is still the number one sport out there, and they'll figure it out. But I think it's had a big impact on the season so far.
Yeah, it's almost. I mean, this might be hard personnel wise and might be a little bit expensive, but you figure what there's probably 10 games going on at one time, or well, in the 1 o'clock slot, there's might be like 5, 6, 7, 8 games going on at one time. But it's almost would be interesting to see a panel of refs that can vote on a call because everything is reviewable now. We have cameras everywhere. We can review everything. It'd almost be interesting to see like a panel of refs, review these calls and make a vote, and maybe like a five-person collection of refs that can vote on these calls, and at least they'll make it a little bit more fair to people. They might enjoy seeing that a little bit more as opposed to just one sideline ref making the final decision. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I know what you mean, and it's not a bad idea. The problem there, though, with the NFL, the one thing that they're always very careful about, one of the reasons they've been so successful, is they don't want to acknowledge or admit to anything being wrong or any issues, and
True.
so putting something like that in place would be a blatant acknowledgement that we're not doing this very well. So I doubt that they would go in that direction. The thing that I don't understand is, regardless of who the officials are, the pass interference rules are written. We know what pass interference should be and shouldn't be. And you said the most important thing is that I think it's being called arbitrarily by a lot of these officials as to what they think should be pass interference. And I think that's where the league's focus is right now in trying to figure that out. Again, it's not pass interference is not the only problem, but it is the most obvious and the biggest. And I think what it goes back to, because this has been annoying me for 11 months now, is I still think that the Eagles would have and should have won the Super Bowl if that official hadn't blown the pass interference call with a minute something left, and that it's almost as if that kicked it off. And then coming into the season, I'm not saying anybody intentionally has those concerns, but it seems to have escalated a lot during the course of this season.
You say before we'll actually get into the teams and the actual games here in a second, but my last question on this topic, you kind of say how the NFL doesn't want to admit fault, and I get that. I totally get that. But don't you think fans would like to see them at least trying something. I know why you say that and why the NFL would be afraid to implement new things, because like you said, it would be them admitting fault. But my viewpoint is I think fans would like to see them trying something different. I think they would welcome it, don't you?
Yeah, and I don't. I'm not accusing the league of having any problem with that. I think the league
Mhm.
wants to get it right, but another one of their major focus has been shortening the length of games and getting them played quicker, and I know that they're focused on that right now. And anything they do to try and improve the officiating is going to take more time, and it's going to impact something else that they're trying to do, which is to make games a little shorter and go a little quicker. I'm
Mhm.
not sure why that's all that important, to be honest with you. I've never, well, I shouldn't say never, but rarely do I say, wow, this game is taking too long. You sit there, you watch the game, when it's over,
Sure.
it's over. But I do know that that's part of the concern with them, is they don't want to do too much. They
At one
don't
time,
want to
yeah.
make changes where they don't need changes.
Especially at one time, all at once, too many changes. Well, let's go into the actual teams here. Let's actually break down the NFL. Talked about officiating, very important. Officiating, like I totally admit, I agree with you, Hub. It's a big problem that they have to figure out. But let's start with the NFC. I'll ask you this, kind of start us off here. I mean, I'm an Eagles fan. I'm from Philadelphia, but even I say the Eagles are not the best team in the NFC. Despite their record, they have the best record. I still think it's either Dallas or 49ers. What do you make of the NFC this year? A lot of surprises. I mean, Seahawks have not been playing as good. Lions obviously have probably the best season they've had in forever, it seems like. And what is your just overall impression on the NFC? Like, who do you think is the best team despite the record? And what has been your take on the NFC so far?
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned Dallas and San Francisco because I can't explain that 49 or 3 game losing streak. I
Mm-hmm.
thought at the start of the year and coming in the first 5 weeks, they were the best team in the NFL. And then they were just bad for 3 weeks. And now they've come back. And in the last three, they look like the 49ers again.
Yep.
You look at Dallas and, you look at last night and barely getting by, Seattle. And Seattle's not a bad football team. They're a good football team, but that's it. And I'm not so sure. I mean, record wise, obviously the Eagles are the best team in the NFL, and I'm not so sure that even beyond the record that they aren't the best team in the NFL, because it's not about how you win or how much you win by. A W is a W, and I like to look at depth charts and rosters and talent, and assume that eventually, by the time we get to the playoffs, the teams with the most talent almost always are going to be the teams that are winning. And I think that we're probably still there. The
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs have been a little difficult to figure out this year.
Mm-hmm.
They've won enough. They've lost a couple games you never saw coming. They're not as, I won't say not as good, but I would say not as productive on offense this year. And that's because of the drop passes. I have never seen an NFL team, one team with so many receivers dropping passes as the Chiefs have had this year. So that's part of the problem there. But at the end of the day, the one big change, again, I come back to Cleveland and Cincinnati. Even the 49ers, even though, Purdy didn't miss, a lot of time, he had
Mm-hmm.
an injury to deal with. I think that that's a big part of it. And then also the fact that there are so many young quarterbacks playing who aren't ready yet, and it makes a lot of this inconsistent. From week to week, a lot of these teams just aren't the same because they're not getting the same quarterback play. And so I think we're just going through a transition in the league right now at that position. And it will evolve. It'll take care of itself,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully by the playoffs. I think by the time we get to the playoffs, you're still going to see some really good play. You also see some of these, I don't want to call them old timers, but guys that we thought were done, kind of like a Russell Wilson, who's
Mm-hmm.
coming back and
Mm-hmm.
having an incredible year. So and that's part of what I think makes the NFL so much fun. I can't figure out the Broncos. I don't know where they came from, after the start they had. But I think that the quarterback play is a huge part of a lot of what we're talking about, in addition to the questions
Yeah.
with the officials.
Yeah, you mentioned I mean, you mentioned young quarterbacks, but CJ Stroud obviously would be the opposition to that argument. He's been, well, what have your been thoughts on him? Just how well he's been playing. I mean, could be an MVP consideration. CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I've heard that talked about the last week or two, and I don't think he's a serious MVP
Me neither.
consideration because the team's not going to be good enough, and they may make the playoffs. But I think that at this point, it's interesting. Mahomes, I think, is ranked just 10th or 11th as a passer, but he's probably the favorite again until the Chiefs lose a playoff game. So, well, and they're going to vote before the playoffs. So, we'll see how that develops. But C.J. Stroud certainly is a story. I could not believe that the Chargers made Bryce Young the number one pick in the draft. I just, a 5'10" quarterback in the NFL today, that's going to be a miracle if he can consistently be the guy you want him to be. And so far, he's been a lot less than that. Then you turn around and look at Stroud, who, coming out of Ohio State, you thought, yeah, he's in the conversation in that top 5 group. I don't know about number 1 overall, but the issue there was that almost no Ohio State quarterback has ever become significant in the NFL. I mean, they've had some good quarterbacks, but not franchise guys. And I think that, unfortunately and unfairly, was part of the concern about him. But certainly, what you've seen so far, he's playing as well as any quarterback in the league. And I don't think anybody thought, even beyond his play, that Houston had improved their defense, that much, and they have. They're running the football better, and so as he has emerged, the whole roster has looked better, and he's the biggest reason for it. So I'm not saying he shouldn't be considered for MVP. I just don't think he will because it's pretty unusual for a rookie, and especially again at that position if the team doesn't win more games. But we'll see how the next 5 weeks play out.
D'Amico Ryans could definitely be the coach of the year, though, for sure.
Oh
There's
yeah.
no doubt about that. What about Carolina Panthers, though? I mean, are you surprised they're as bad as they are? Bryce Young has been struggling as much as he has been this year. I mean, I thought they would get at least 6 wins, but
Yeah,
not really 10 right now.
I can't say I'm shocked. I didn't understand. Well, I understood it. I didn't agree with taking the quarterback number 1. I didn't agree with starting him right away. I don't think teams are doing that more and more the last 5-6 years, and I just don't think that's a great idea if you look at how these guys are developing them. But it's not just that. They weren't the worst team in the league last year. The Bears were. That's why they traded with them to get the pick. But they were, one of the bottom 10. They did give up a lot in that trade when you think of giving up DJ Moore. And so I didn't pick them as the worst team in the league, which they are right now. But I'm also not terribly shocked that they're struggling. I know, and what's really, I think, well, I shouldn't say unfair, but Reich getting fired, he, according to my sources, he didn't want Stroud to be his guy. He wasn't sure about making that pick at number 1. He was okay with the trade and maybe drafting a quarterback, but that wasn't his first choice. And so now, when you've got a veteran NFL head coach in his first year with a new quarterback who wasn't his pick, you're off to a bad start to begin with, and things have gone south from there. What's interesting about that team, though, is that when you look at Carolina, their defense is playing really well. I'm surprised that they're 1-10 as well as their defense is playing, but the offense has just been awful and finding ways to lose games.
Yeah, I'm looking at the defensive leaders now and yards allowed. Yeah, they're top 6, I think it is, in yards allowed per game. So you're right, defense for the Panthers are playing pretty well, but it is concerning for the Panthers because they don't have a first-round pick next year. So, I mean, what do they do in the offseason to kind of help get their team bolstered and get some help around Bryce Young?
Yeah, you can't write off Young yet, and I'm not writing him off. He may still prove to be a very good NFL quarterback. It's just too soon with these rookies. But rebuilds are tough. As you mentioned, I'm based in Chicago, and obviously the Bears, one of the maybe the most famous franchise in the league. The old man created the NFL, and yet it's been 45 years since they've had a quarterback, and now you've got all this with Justin Fields and everything going on with them. And so I just think when you go through these rebuilds, part of the problem these days, Jared, is that with media, what it's become, and the amount of fans on the various websites, whether it's what's it called now, X, or face,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. Fans offer these opinions and say things that it's not really clear whether they know what they're talking about or whether they heard this from somebody, or it's just their opinion. And so there's so much questionable information out there about so many teams and so many things that I think that's part of what's adding to what we were talking about at the top. Just the difference in the league and the difference in the game this year. And the reason I mentioned Chicago and the Bears is that everybody wants the coach fired, who's actually not doing a bad job in a rebuild. They want the GM fired, who hasn't done a bad job. They're not, and they love the quarterback, even though the quarterback is doing a bad job. So it's just, the way the game is being reported and covered right now, I just think is confusing a lot of things for a lot of people, particularly fans. Yeah. And it's a big part of what we were talking about at the top, just the difference in the NFL this season.
Well, it's like mob mentality almost, but more in a virtual sense. It's just a take gets going on social, gets going online, and if it's popular enough, everyone's going to join it. And like you said, even if it's something that's not super validated, like a coach getting fired that shouldn't have been fired, it's if it sounds good enough and it sounds like everyone's on board, everyone else is going to want to be on board too. It really is like a mob mentality. What's been your thoughts? Let's switch to the AFC. I know you kind of already touched base on Kansas City. But what about the AFC North? Have you been surprised? I mean, just how competitive the AFC North has been. I mean, obviously Deshaun Watson, he's done for the Browns. Steelers have been outplayed every single game. They are 7-4. Baltimore is 9-3. That's no surprise. But let's just start with the AFC North. Like, what has been your takeaway from the AFC North so far? Like, I'm surprised it's as close as it was. I thought Baltimore would be up by 3-4 games at this point in the division, but no, it's still anyone's to take for except the Bengals maybe. But what's been your take overall for that division?
Well, I'm not surprised because I thought coming into the season that those were 4 of the 6 or 7 best defenses in the league, and I've always been kind of a defense and run the football kind of guy. That's still a good way to win a lot of games in the NFL, and that's what's kept that division so competitive. Is those defenses. Although again, with the Bengals, obviously the injuries of quarterback are going to kill you. But beyond that, I can't figure out why their defense has been so bad this year. And that they don't have the same excuse for. But when you look at the Ravens and you look at the Browns, and then even you look at the Steelers. I mean, statistically, the Steelers' defense is bad, but they're near the top in points allowed and turnover takeaway, and that's going to keep you competitive. I think that's why that division is still so strong. Now, I think that at this point, you can't really, the Browns without a quarterback, the Steelers just don't play enough offense. I think you got to look at the Ravens as a clear favorite to hang on and win that division. And I'm not so sure. I was talking to Dave Wanstedt, the former head coach who works on our TV show with us. We were talking about this the other day, and we kind of agreed. I'm not so sure I wouldn't pick the Ravens in the AFC right now. I think they may be the most complete team on both sides of the football. And again, they have a quarterback who has been playing pretty close to MVP level. So to me, they're the cream in that group. But I think it's the defenses on those other teams that keep the conference so competitive.
Yeah, so you think the Ravens might actually be the best team in the AFC right now, it sounds like. And I think so too. I think they're very I mean, the Jaguars are currently there too, but you mentioned Kansas City. They have a lot of problems with dropping the ball. Miami though, what's your take on Miami? Because I know their biggest a lot of flack they've been getting is they haven't really been beating any good teams this year. So do you kind of get a sense of Miami being a little bit flaky, especially as we head into the end of the year here and going into the playoffs?
I really don't. I kind of go back to a W as a W, and teams don't make their own schedules, so I don't think teams should be faulted for the schedules that they play. They get that, they inherit that at the beginning of the season, and you got to win. And the thing about the Dolphins that interests me the most is that their defense has improved dramatically over the last 5 or 6 weeks. They were one of the worst defenses in the league through the first 5 weeks, and they've been playing much better lately. They've got the talent to do it. To it. is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The offense is the best offense in the league. It was ranked number one in everything until a couple of weeks ago. They've slipped a little bit to the 3s and 4s in the last couple of weeks. But it was my concern about their defense that kept me from including them in the top teams in the AFC. But now, as we move towards the playoffs and the defense continues to improve, they could be a legitimate contender too.
Speaking of flaky though, like what is a shaky team that you do see on both sides on both conferences? I mean, for me, it is the Eagles on the NFC, and for the AFC side, it probably would be. I mean, in my opinion, the Miami. I know we just kind of talked about that, but is there like a flaky team that you see going into the playoffs? Like, you wouldn't be surprised that despite how good they are and despite how much hype they had going into the playoffs, you could definitely see them losing maybe the first round.
Well, it's interesting what you say about the Eagles as an Eagle fan, because statistically, other than their pass defense, which has been terrible, I think 28th or 29th in the league, the Eagles are top 10 in almost every category on both sides of the ball. So I don't have the same concerns that you do about the Eagles. And I think that they are the most, either them or the 49ers are the most talented team in the NFC. I think that they're both probably as talented or more than anybody in the AFC, except maybe the Ravens. So to me, they're the top teams. But the team that could be the biggest surprise or the biggest disappointment, I'm not sure that the Detroit Lions, even though they're 8-3, are for real. And I think if you look at the last couple of weeks, you see, where that concern would come from. I think that they've got, maybe the best offensive line in football. And they've got some difference makers, but they're not as deep as the other top teams. I'm trying to think other teams that could lose early. It would surprise me, but as I mentioned again near the top, I still can't explain that 49er 3-game.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but it could happen again in the playoffs. I wouldn't think so. Even during the 3-game losing streak, Brock Purdy was still the number one ranked quarterback in the league. And so, but there's no team that jumps out. The Jaguars are an interesting team to me because I picked Trevor Lawrence as my MVP to start the season, or my vote for MVP. And obviously you don't make that decision at the start, but that was a prediction. And there's times when he's looked like it, and there's other times when he's really struggled. And that whole team, I mean, right now they're going to win that division. They've been as hot as anybody in the league after those first 3 or 4 weeks. But there are weeks where they just don't show up, and I can't really explain that. And then also you look at them statistically, and there's nowhere where they jump out at you. But there is more than enough talent on that team to be a contender. But I wouldn't be shocked if they lost a first round playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side of that, I mean, what's been the biggest surprise of a team? I mean, for me, like I said, we'll go through conferences again. For me, it's obviously on the NFC side. It's probably been the Lions, I would say. I mean, how they've been playing this year. And then on the AFC side, I think it's hard to say it wouldn't be the Broncos and how they've been playing, especially these last 5 games. I mean, what has been like the most pleasant surprise for you as a team on each side of each conference?
Well, I'm happy for Lions fans because it's been their whole lives since they've had, a top team, and to see them, up until a couple of weeks ago playing the way that they were has been great to see. And I think, how can the Denver Broncos, anybody who remembers that 70-20 loss, and what was it, 1-4 at the time, to see where that team is at now, that's just been shocking to me because they didn't make roster changes. They're not doing anything differently. Yep. It just took them the first 5-6 weeks of the seasons to arrive. And now, not only are they winning these games, but look at the teams that they've been beating the last few weeks. I mean, they're beating playoff teams, and so they apparently are for real. And that, if I had to pick one, that has been the biggest surprise of the season so far for me, the way they've bounced back.
This has been awesome, Hub. I really appreciate your time again. Have to have you on again at sometime in the future. But what has been any predictions for the Super Bowl that you have coming up? I know we kind of already been touching on it this whole interview, but 2 teams. What are you thinking? What are you thinking right now, heading into December? You could see making the Super Bowl. What's your predictions for that?
Off what we've seen so far, there really are four teams for me. It's the Eagles and the 49ers, and it's the Ravens and the Chiefs. Now we know that that's going to change a little bit over these last 6 weeks because some things always do, but they look to be the four best teams. And, I don't know, some people maybe want to repeat. I don't want to see the Eagles and Chiefs again. I'd rather see the 49ers and the Ravens because it'll be different and there'll be more stories that come with it. But based on the way they are playing right now, I probably would have to pick the 49ers and the Ravens.
Yeah, that's not a bad choice at all. And anything else you want to mention? I mean, anything else about this season that's been surprising you? You want to get off your chest before we head out here?
No, I've been more than frustrated by the whole officiating thing, and we talked about that. And I know that the league is trying to make improvements in it. I am surprised that teams, it used to be you never started a rookie quarterback, and now it's almost like automatic. If you draft them in the first round, you got to play them, and I think it's holding some of these kids back. And I hope that the teams this year, there's going to be at least four, probably as many as six drafted in the first round, maybe as many as six, I should say. And I hope that teams are smart about it and that they give these kids a chance to develop before they throw them in the fire. But beyond that, I can't remember a time when there was so much outstanding talent at the wide receiver position. There's so many great ones right now. And the way that running backs have been devalued makes no sense to me because I still think running the football is as important as anything in the league. But at the end of the day, change is constant in everything, not just the NFL. And so, there's nothing to worry about or nothing unusual. And I'm hoping that as we get to the playoffs, it'll be another great playoff run.
Well, Hub, I mean, you just alluded to it too. This quarterback this quarterback draft is loaded this year coming up. So yeah, 5-6 quarterbacks for sure will be drafted this year, and I'm not going to be surprised by that. Well, Hub, like I said, this has been awesome. I have to do this again sometime, maybe in the playoffs. Have you back on? Talk some ball in the playoffs. Let's see how the teams are doing, and until then, I guess we'll talk then. Okay.
All right, great talking to you. Take care, and I'll look forward to talking again soon.
All right, Hub. Take care. All right, guys, let's finish up the show, head off into the weekend. Justin, we'll start with you like we always do on Saturdays. What is your
off the map of the week is the Baseball Hall of Fame ballot for next year in 2024. Two umpires are on the ballot in Eddie Montage and Joe West. Pretty controversial to put an umpire on, yeah, but I don't believe there has been umpires on the ballot before for the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see if the committee votes for Joe West and Ed Montage or one of the two umpires to go into the Hall of Fame.
No, I'm counting it now. No, there's like 10 in the Hall of Fame. Last one, Henry O'Day in 2013, and I'm trying to see when the first one was elected. I didn't even know umpires were in the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, 1953. Two of them were elected in 1953. Thomas Connolly and if I can see the other one, I don't even know.
And yet Barry Bonds and Pete Rose aren't in the Hall of Fame. Come on.
Yep.
But the 10, umpires are.
Yep. But we have 10 of them. Yeah, we have two next year coming up. Crazy. My off the map of the week, Indiana hiring Kirk Cignetti as its next football coach. Indiana, of course, fired Tom Allen on Sunday, day after the Hoosiers completed their third consecutive losing season. Cignetti, of course, the coach of James Madison, was named the 2023 Sun Belt Conference Coach of the Year on Thursday. James Madison, seamless transition, it seemed like, into the FBS. Should have had a bowl game this year. That's a whole other conversation, though, of course. Led the Dukes to a 11-1 season, top of the Sun Belt, led the nation in both rushing defense and tackles for loss per game, and had a top 20 scoring offense and scoring defense in all of FBS, not just the Sun Belt, of course. Across his last 5 seasons, Cignetti has a 52-9 record at James Madison, including a 31-4 record in conference play. Huge get for the Hoosiers. Like I just said, Hoosiers had their third consecutive losing season this past season when it ended on last week. So awesome pickup for Indiana, and good for Kirk Cignetti. I'm happy to see and excited to see what he can do with the Hoosiers in Indiana next year. Zach, what is your off the map?
Well, it's off the map to some people, probably not you, but West Virginia choosing to keep Neil Brown for another season. I don't mind it necessarily because they went 8-4. I just wonder if this is the best thing for this program going forward because we've seen large stretches of mediocrity. His 30-29 record is the worst through 5 seasons of any West Virginia coach. His teams have never been ranked, and they're 10-18 on the road. Those are not very good statistics, and you look at their 8-4 record this year, who was really the best team they beat? It's hard to really pinpoint that, so I'm fine with them keeping him for another year because they probably put a win total on it before the season started, and he probably met that total. But I still would have the seat pretty warm going into 2024.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, exactly. I don't know who else they would really get. I don't know if they have the money to get someone else. It's not the program has been on the decline for so long now. It seems like. I mean, I went to the BYU game. I know they killed BYU, but besides that, like you said, Zach, they didn't really have a much. They didn't really have a super impressive win and a couple bad losses in there too. So we'll see. Definitely on the hot seat though, still going in the next season. His job is not secure by any means, even though with this new deal. Long haul, Justin. What
My
is
long haul of the week is teams in college football and college basketball have to start using the transfer portal. The transfer portal is a thing of the present and it will be a thing of the future. Guys want to have careers in the NFL and the NBA too, and obviously good college careers will get that started. So schools got to start using the transfer portal.
Yeah, I know. College football obviously have a lot of people in the transfer portal, but kind of recently speaking, college basketball has been having a ton of players, more than even last year. The amount of people that have entered even recently this year has been insane. So yeah, it's definitely utilize it. I mean, I know a lot of people hate it, but I'm all for it if it's going to make a better product and better teams. My long haul of the week, everyone being hyped about EA Sports announcing the NCAA football game or football, NCAA football game. It'll be released this summer. It's exciting, but in all likelihood, the game isn't really ready to be released. It has a lot of work to do. EA still has a lot of work to do to get the NIL rights for every single player in the FBS and FCS, and their compensation package has not been great thus far. So even if the game is somehow ready, it will not be the game everyone is expecting it to be. And as a lot of kinks need to be figured out, especially like I said, with these players and playing for these players' name and likeness. So exciting game, exciting in theory, but it's kind of a mess that still needs to be figured out, and the hype needs to subside because people are going to be very upset when the game is either delayed or not what consumers thought it would be. So maybe wait for the announcement to come out until they figure out some more of these kinks. And people need to understand there's still a lot more work to do on the game before it's released this summer. Zach, finish us off. What is your long haul?
LeBron saying he would skip his team's game in order to watch his son's debut, and anybody who has a problem with that should get bent. Like, look, Bronny just went through a serious heart issue. There was wonder whether he was going to live or what kind of life he was going to have. If he can go out there and play basketball, LeBron should absolutely be there. And I don't care about the regular season, especially if they're not playing against a team that's all that particularly good. LeBron has put in enough time. He's been in 21 years now, played more minutes than anybody. He's the leading scorer in the history of the game. And the only people that have a problem with this are people like Skip Bayless who just hate on LeBron for no reason. There's no reason for hating. That's called being a family guy, and he should want to go see his son's debut. Some things are bigger than the NBA regular season, which, as we've talked about many times before, is one of the least important regular seasons in all of sports. So LeBron skipping a Laker game to go watch his son, absolutely the right move.
Not to put you on the spot, when is it though? I'm just
they haven't said.
Curious. Do you know?
It's a hypothetical. He said if they
yeah.
play on the same day. That's not even guaranteed to happen.
True. Yeah. Speaking of Skip Bayless, though, did he find a co-host yet?
Well, he's found a couple.
Do you guys know if you've...
Richard Sherman and Michael Irvin, all those guys that don't let him talk, which is good for all of us.
I saw the thing on. Yeah, I know he had a spat with Richard Sherman. That didn't seem to really work out, but yeah, he must be a character to work with. But yeah, oh well, cool though. Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm glad. I know I'm looking at it now. ESPN, Bronny cleared to play, so we'll see when that'll be. But yeah, I agree. Let him play. I mean, LeBron can do whatever he wants at this point. I mean, he's had that. He has that title at this point. Awesome show, guys. We'll do this again on Tuesday. trying to get somebody from Washington to speak on, just the Commanders coming up in general. Ovechkin's going to have a scoring title come up soon, and a lot to talk about with Washington, working on that as well. But as always, break down NFL this past weekend, the games we just previewed. We'll break them all down on Tuesday. Awesome show, as always. But until then, we'll see you on Tuesday, and keep on traveling.